I'd like to start with a little personal confession. When I grew up, I used to like hitchhiking, and my parents hated it, and my dad is actually in the audience, so he can testify that they hated it. But now things are changing. Now, parents are sometimes encouraging their kids to hitchhike, because BlaBlaCar was founded in 2004 and completely changed the whole idea of hitchhiking. It became the largest long-distance carpooling community in the world. We're lucky to have Mazzella, who founded BlaBlaCar in 2004. He also worked for NASA in the United States, for NTT in Japan, and as both the commissioner and the state secretary spoke a lot about scale-ups, he's here to tell us about how they made it and succeeded to scale up to that level. I invite you to take the floor, please.
Thank you very much. So yeah, we've been talking about scale-ups a lot, and I thought it would be a good occasion for us to actually go through the story and how we've scaled up in Europe and a bit beyond, about the story over the past years and how to do, because what we need is, of course, more scale-ups, and I hope we will have dozens and dozens of them, maybe even in this room, thanks to the Startup Prize. So a few numbers to be very quick. Today, BlaBlaCar is a community of 60 million members. We are in 22 countries, and it's 18 million travelers per quarter. That was the last statistics from the last quarter last year. And so to give you a sense of scale, if we compare in the transportation as a whole, you know that the Eurostar network as a whole is 2.5 million travelers per quarter. We do 18 million, and a company like British Airways is doing 10 million travelers per quarter, so, and we're doing 18. So we also, of course, because we pool people in the cars, so we do long-distance carpooling, so we help drivers with empty seats to find passengers going the same way. We have a very good solution for saving the environment as well, because it's very easy to imagine that it's better to have 2 people per car than to have 2 cars per people. And so that's simply what we do, thanks to the digital wonders. So how did we do? It's one example, but since it's worked not that bad, I thought I would share it. What we've done is, first, we've proven our business model in France, in one country, and then we really thought about being global, and we were very ambitious about expanding internationally, but in a unified way, unified and lean. And then we deployed a structure which we call global, meaning that it's both global and local, and it really helps when you have actually to scale your product internationally to have both those approaches. So think unified is like think of a brand that is that will scale itself. It can scale everywhere. At the very beginning, we were called covoiturage. So covoiturage in France is carpooling. The thing is, when we, of course, discussed with people from the UK or people from Spain, it didn't work because covoiturage or covoiturage didn't really work. So we had to find a new brand, and so it took a long time, but then the brand BlaBlaCar seemed to work just about everywhere. It was easy to pronounce, it was easy to remember, and it also had this special feature about what we do, which is since we match people together, they tend to discuss. And so the reason why we're called BlaBlaCar is because when you register in the service, you choose how much you talk in the car. So you actually choose if you are blah, 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 or blah, blah, blah. And this says how much you'll be talking during the ride. So that's the reason why we're called this way. And then thinking lean and going far, to go far is really important. And you have to make sure your model will allow you to expand, because having like 10,000 or 100,000 members is really not the same story as having 1 million, 10 million, and 60 million. So if your processes and if everything you've done is not scaling, then you will just not be able to fund the growth. So you really have to think about being lean in everything you do. Also, fundraising is really not an end. It's not even a beginning. It's just very regular in the life of a company like ours. We've fundraised very regularly for years. which means that each step you have to have a different goal. It helps because the investors want to know what is the next step and why they are paying for, so what they are buying. So for us, the first round with some of my friends and business angels was 600K. It was just to exist, basically, and create the product, and also become the leader in France, which we were able to achieve. Then a second round in 2010 for 1.2 million was to prove a business model that would allow us to scale. We've tried 6 business models in total, and the business model that we are on today is transactional, and it's really helped us scale. And then we did some runs of expansion, international expansion, for like 10 million, then 100 million, and then 200 million. But we had proven that the system was working. So it's really a continuous effort to raise funds. And it's good to be in that mindset, because fundraising once is good, but then you have to think about how you will fundraise for the next rounds. That's an image of our international expansion. So we're now in 22 countries. We started to expand first in Spain in 2009, just to try, because it's also good to have at least 2 countries and not just one, because it prepares all your team to not think about just one country. And then when you have to expand, because if your company is totally French, and then you want to expand when your team is already 30 or 50 people, it's really, really tough to have everybody switch the culture and switch the tool. But it's better if you have another country as a test, at least, so that everybody knows that there's not only one country on Earth. And then it helps also with the structure I will be talking about, that you can raise further. So the structure, the local structure that we have put in place is that we have an HQ, so it's in Paris, where most of the people are. We have like about 250 people in Paris, and then we have 10 other offices in other countries, and some of the jobs and those competencies are in Paris, and some other competencies and skills are on the field. So for us, a digital company like ours, in Paris, we have tech, data, legal, people meaning like all the HR functions, product, finance, facilities, of course, and member relations. What we call member relations is actually customer support for most of the companies, but since we have a community of members, we say members. And then when you scale in new countries, you have to have people who will make local partnerships. They will do some business development, local communication and marketing. So you have a team of, for us, it's about 5 to 10 people, depending on the countries. And then they communicate with the HQ and with some people who are in charge of communicating with them, which is a function of global growth. So they will be communicating on a daily basis to help local countries really scale to the maximum. And so once you have this model in place, you are able to replicate and have several countries. You enter in a phase of international expansion, which works. But if you don't staff correctly, and if you don't have a clear vision of how to organize the structures, then you would not scale properly. So the way to expand in countries as well, we found out there are 3 options, and 3 of them, all of them should be considered because they are very useful. So the first one, which we've used 7 or 8 times, is what we call acqui-hire. It's like you find a good local team which does the same job as you. So like you'll find a company which has the same activity as you, a small team of startuppers who are fighting with life, just like you were earlier on, meaning like they eat pastas and they don't spend much money, and they code day and night, and they answer to their first clients day and night as well. So you go and see them, and you're like, okay, we have the mothership in Paris where lots of people like you think like you, and for us it was when we were to see the entrepreneurs in countries, we would tell them, you love carpooling, we do too, and we know that you're a bit alone in your country, so we will help you as well to scale carpooling in your country. And so we were bringing like the product itself as well, the member relations, meaning that they don't need to answer to their own customers. We can pool that in Paris with people who speak all the languages. We'll also provide you with a brand and with a playbook to scale faster. And so you will have to deal with local partnerships and business development, but we'll take care of a lot of things for you, so tech, product, the playbook as well to expand faster on your acquisition marketing. So this has proven to be a very good solution. You have to align people, so make sure that when you actually do the M&A, you incentivize the local entrepreneurs to the main structure. So like the local entrepreneurs would trade their shares of their company for shares in BlaBlaCar. So like we're all in the same boat and everybody's motivated to make the company grow internationally as fast as we can. The other solution is a spin-off. So like if you have a team of of people in your team who want to go expand in the country, so that happened for us, for example, in Germany. We had 5 people from Germany in our teams in Paris, and so they went to Hamburg to launch the German company. And so in this way, you can do it because you have people who know the culture locally and also know the company, and so they are able to actually launch the activity in their own country. The other way, of course, is the hardest, is hire locally. For us, we did that in some countries when we couldn't find a local company with whom we could partner, or when we weren't able to do a spin-off. It's a lot harder. Like I remember, for example, for some countries, we had more than 800 candidates to filter out to find the right person who would drive the team locally. But you can also consider that option. So a few words to finish on what's next for Europe. And I didn't anticipate that everybody would be so focused as well on scale-ups. So I'm really happy because my conclusion just goes in the same sense as everything that has been said. So we need more scale-ups in Europe. Scale-ups are getting some fundings, and so we see that the fundings and the VC scene is really good right now, and we see lots of companies being funded, so that's okay. It's going in the right direction. We need our teams to think international, and so to go international with some methods. They could use ours. And we also need some talent, which means we need to be attractive. We need to think of Europe as a European tech scene that is attractive for all the tech talent on Earth, actually. So this is a common effort that we have to do to make sure that we attract people who know how to build those companies. Because if you look at the markets and if you look at how they produce or not what we call now the unicorns, you see the US has a market of about 300 million people, and they've produced 120 unicorns. Europe has 500 million people. We've produced 57 unicorns. China has 1.3 billion people. They've produced 66 unicorns. And you can look at some metrics. They are a bit similar. But the reality is that we don't do the same race. Actually, if you compare scaling in the US or in China versus scaling in Europe, it is not the same, because when you scale in the US or China, you actually have a single unified market. So it's a big playground, and it's wonderful. They have a single culture, they have a single currency, a single labor laws, and single taxes. When you scale in Europe, you have to adapt to dozens of countries with different labor laws, different taxes, different ways of seeing how to handle data, different ways of different currencies as well. So you have to be prepared that it's a bit more tough to scale in Europe than it is in other markets. But it can work if you are prepared mentally and if you put a lot of effort in it and make sure that you adapt your product to each of the new countries. So to conclude, I would say, of course, that Europe is a wonderful playground for mobility solutions. Some statistics as well. You may know that 1% of the total GDP per capita in EU is spent on average in traffic jams. So it's like 275 euros per citizen per year. And we spend 2 hours per day in average in transit. So there is a lot of potential for improving all this. It's not very efficient enough today. And so that's what we're doing. So I would just say to all the startups who've competed for the prize today, please think big. Thank you.
Right here. Right here. Do I have a mic? Frederic, I just wanted to ask you before you go back, when you go on long distance trips, do you still take people from your app? Do you give them rides? You do? Did you drive now from Paris to Brussels?
No, today I did not, but I do actually. I do some rides. It's funny. I try to not say who I am, but sometimes it doesn't work. Last time it was a journalist, and then it was
of transportation.
No, not of transportation. But then I was driving, and he was my passenger, and then he began, and so we began to discuss. And then at some point, I was stuck because he was asking me what I was doing and everything. So he said, well, I know, actually, I know. So
did he give you a rank at the end of the ride? Were you a good driver?
Yes,
okay.
I have only 5-star ratings.
Okay, I hope you gave him also a good rank, because otherwise he might write an article about your platform.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. You're the scale-up that inspires these startups, and that's, I think, their dream of what they would like to become. And on that note, thank you very much. We're going to go back to the pitching exercise.
Thank you.